Julia, and there he is. He's our man on all things geopolitics. John Jordan, former naval intelligence officer, good enough to join us now. Did you catch what, I'm sure you did, but did you catch Mr. Putin's words there at the end? In fact, I wrote them down. He said, NATO has, they say, no military intentions, but they do have military capabilities, and they keep getting closer and closer to our borders. What are we supposed to do? Does he have a point?
Well, NATO is encroached on the areas which are traditionally Russian, and I can understand Mr. Putin's point in that regard. However, the capabilities of NATO members along Russia's borders are pretty feeble, and there are absolutely there's no credible military threat to Russian territory. Now, Mr. Putin may be right. That could change in time, but not right now. So just the capabilities on the NATO side really are not there to pose a threat to Russian territorial integrity.
What about these missiles that Mr. Putin was displaying, or his military was displaying today? Missiles that they say, some people describe them as invincible, that the United States doesn't even have the capability of shooting these things down because they're so supersonic, so strong.
Well, the fact is, Rick, that both the United States and the Soviet Union and now Russia have the ability to overwhelm the limited ABM or ballistic missile defenses that the other is able to field just by sheer numbers. The U.S., for instance, only has a few dozen interceptors that are capable of intercepting a traditional ballistic missile, but just by sheerly launching hundreds of them with warheads, with decoys, those defenses would be rendered essentially useless. The United States and Russia have had the ability to lay waste to the other country since the 60s. So I'm not sure that this really changes anything militarily.
Finally, the question of the INF and the fact that Mr. Putin seems to consistently refer to it as saying, look, you've kind of backed me into a corner here by walking out on that treaty. I'm just going to have to continue to make more missiles, as they seem to be displaying today. What do you make of that argument, John?
Well, the INF Treaty is an anachronism. It's from the early 1980s when there was very real prospect of war between the Warsaw Pact and NATO. Technologies also changed. The United States, for its part, doesn't really need intermediate nuclear forces deployed in Europe to deter Russia. With our Ohio-class ballistic missiles and W-80 tipped Tomahawk cruise missiles forward deployed on attack submarines, the United States can achieve much the same result. The fact is that Russia and the United States can lay waste to each other's cities, and Russia can lay waste to Europe. And I would submit that, it doesn't really matter if you're killed by a weapon of 1960s technology or a nuclear weapon delivered by a hypersonic glide vehicle. You're going to be just as dead, Rick.
So we shouldn't be worried then about Mr. Putin's latest weaponry?
Well, the state of the art in technology and military has been improving steadily since man started throwing sticks and stones at each other. So there's always going to be advances in new technologies, and then there'll be new technologies developed to counter that and so forth. It's been that way since bows and arrows gave way to crossbows.
I wonder, though, in the end, if there's any way that we should finally get back together again, the Russian side, the U.S. side, and come up with some new deal. You say what?
I hope so.
Me too. John Jordan, as usual, great guest, smart stuff. See you again soon.